Hello, everybody, and welcome to what I know will be a very interesting discussion as well as a special announcement. We're going to wait a little while for people to join, so we will be back to you very shortly. Just give it a minute or so. Okay, I think I will kick off. So I'm Andrea Hotter, the special correspondent at Fast Markets. And I am joined by a great panel today. We're going to discuss how the future of responsible materials and sustainability can fit hand in hand with empowering consumers. To begin, I'd like to introduce the group assembled with me today. First of all, I'd like to introduce Alf Barrios, the current Chief Executive Officer of Aluminium at Rio Tinto, who are also the sponsor of this event. It's a role that Alf has held since 2014, and he's been a real champion of sustainability within the group, launching the first certified low-carbon aluminium and helping the company become the first to be certified by the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative for Responsible Production. Now, I said current CEO because, as our audience may have heard, starting from next month, Alf will be moving to a new role as Chief Commercial Officer within Rio Tinto. So congratulations, Alf. It's a great new appointment, and I might be asking you a little bit about it later as well. I'm also joined today by Tolga Igrilmaza, who is the Vice President Sales and Marketing within the commercial business of Rio Tinto Aluminium. This means he leads the company's bauxite, alumina, and aluminium sales and marketing teams globally, and is a member of the Aluminium Division's Executive Committee. We also are joined today by Dr. Mark White, who is an automotive industry consultant and innovation director for DSW Automotive. Mark worked for around 30 years in Jaguar Land Rover body engineering, including as manager for all body programs, chief technical specialist, and chief of the Body Complete business unit. Mark now works part-time with the aluminium industry to promote its use in the automotive sector. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Matthew Chamberlain, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the London Metal Exchange. Matt joined the LME in 2012, having advised Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing on the acquisition of the LME while he was working at UBS. Matt is also a member of the management committee of HKX Group. So I think to start off with, I'd like to begin with you, Alf. We had a chat last year at the Fast Markets International Aluminium Conference about Rio Tinto's journey as a leader on responsible production in the aluminium industry. Today, you are announcing the next step in that journey. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how it fits in with what Rio Tinto's already been doing?
Thank you, Andrea. Today, proud of announcing a new offering called START, which is all about empowering customers and consumers with ESG information so they can make informed decisions about sustainable products. If you think about the nutrition label, we all used to seeing on a can or a drink or food pack. START is a nutrition label for responsible aluminium that sets a new standard in transparency and traceability for the industry. It brings together blockchain technology and Rio Tinto's commitment to responsible aluminium production to give our customers and end users confidence about where and how the products they purchase are made. Our customers will receive a digital sustainability label using secure blockchain technology. This is our nutrition label. It will provide a broad set of sustainability information about the aluminium and the site where it was produced. Of course, this will include carbon footprint, but much, much more. Green aluminium is not just low carbon aluminium, as we may have thought about it going back 5 or more years. Green aluminium should be responsible aluminium, produced with all the ESG credentials and considerations. In today's world, to talk about green aluminium, we need to have a transparent conversation on responsible production practices across a broad range of metrics, which START delivers. As an upstream producer, we're the first point in the supply chain. So it starts really with us. Our vision is that customers can showcase the sustainability of the aluminium they purchase from Rio Tinto to consumers. This can deliver value, full value, from a responsible production and also empower consumers to make responsible decisions about the materials and products they use every day. It can also deliver value for our customers with their conversations with their investors about sustainability in the supply chain and ESG. We really see this as an exciting next step in Rio Tinto's leadership of the aluminium industry on sustainability and responsible production. As you may remember, and Andrew touched upon it before, in 2016, we launched the industry's first certified low carbon aluminium, Renewal. In 2018, Rio Tinto became the first company to be certified by the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative, ASI, as producing responsible aluminium. And in 2019, we announced the use of ELYSIS, the first zero carbon aluminium by Apple for their products. ELYSIS is a joint venture between Rio Tinto and Alcoa, supported by Apple and the governments of Canada and Quebec, and is working to develop a revolutionary smelting technology free of direct carbon emissions. And in 2020, we announced a groundbreaking partnership with AB InBev, which just a couple of months ago saw the launch of their most sustainable low carbon can in a pilot with Michelob Ultra. Through all of this, for which the credit goes to Tolga and his sales and marketing team, a focus has been on working closely with customers and users and supply chain partners to drive real meaningful change for the industry. And that will continue here with START, our next step in this journey.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds incredibly exciting. And I'm sure that this visually would be really great to see. And I'm really pleased we've got a video that we can play now. So if we're able to play that, that would be fantastic. We can all just mute our screens whilst we do that as well, please.
Today, we expect to know more about the products we buy, where they're from, key ingredients, and responsible production practices. Information about the products we buy empowers us to make informed choices. START Responsible Aluminium will bring together next-generation blockchain technology and Rio Tinto's commitment to responsible aluminium production to provide us with information about the aluminium in the products we purchase every day. With just one click of a QR code, START will reveal where the aluminium was made, its carbon footprint, and the environmental and social standards across production, from raw materials to final product. START provides the information we need to play a part in a sustainable future, whether it's our role in recycling, choosing products that use the lowest carbon aluminium, or spreading the word. START Responsible Aluminium. Our sustainable future starts here.
Wow, we're all back. That's great. Fantastic. And it's great to be able to illustrate something so easily. So Tolga, I'm going to come to you now. Can you tell us a little bit more about how exactly START's going to work? You know, why customers should be getting excited, what advantages you see this bringing them?
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Alf. Look, it's great to be with you all again. It's a super exciting day for all of us in Rio Tinto and Rio Tinto Aluminium, but also for the industry too. Look, if you take a step back, what we're trying to do here, we passionately believe that aluminium is absolutely a great material with great potential ahead of it. It's certainly a material of the future. We believe in working across the value chain through partnerships, not in silos, to ultimately create new demand for aluminium versus other substitute materials. Alf alluded to some of the partnership examples that we worked through. The second is transparency is absolutely key. We see the role of digital being a key enabler for faster and quicker value and information dissemination to our customers. that will enable them to build on the strengths of aluminium. And last but not least, we believe that the blockchain will be absolutely a key enabler in this journey. Look, START stands for sustainability, traceability, and assurance from Rio Tinto. As Alf alluded to earlier, it's about providing our customers with transparent and traceable information in their journey of creating new demand for their products, ultimately competing with other substitute materials as well. It might sound, Andrea, quite simple, but as you would appreciate, it's not that simple. It's quite a radical transparency, actually, and a step change transformation in our journey we're embarking on. Not only this will enable, and it will put in the hand the sustainability credentials of this in our end users, but it also will show the provenance of our products from all the way going back to the mines to products and hence to the customers. In that context, we believe that a better informed aluminium industry certainly could make better decisions. Faster informed industry certainly will be able to position aluminium, which I'm sure Mark will be talking about it, much quicker to the end users. And here, the digital transformation journey that Rio Tinto has been will enable us to bring that sustainability information to our customers in a much swift, faster manner as well. Look, we all live in a pandemic world. It certainly made us further realize the importance of providing this digital interface in the supply chain such that the end users ultimately will be able to get their products in a seamless manner. Now, this is beyond the context. What our customers will get, one, our customers will receive a sustainability label for each shipment of aluminium from our operations that are managed by Rio Tinto. It will provide environmental, social, governance information across 10 key metrics, ranging from CO2 emissions to water use, biodiversity, and many more. Two, our customers will also receive a half-yearly letter of sustainability, support their ambitions, their sustainability requirements, so that they will be able to position this appropriately with the end users. This will be every 6 months. Ultimately, we believe that by placing this information at the hands of our customers efficiently and quickly, it will help them choose the right aluminium that is responsibly produced across the value chain. Look, we also alluded to that on previous panels too. We fundamentally believe that the real competition for aluminium is not within the aluminium industry per se. It's actually, it's much broader than that. The real competition is outside with other substitute materials like plastics. And we believe that we haven't really helped ourselves on explaining the credentials of aluminium right across the value chain for that matter. And also in that journey, we believe, Andrea, we need to learn from the vantage point of our customers, basically, and the end users. How do we connect the dots right across the value chain? This will be critical. This is where everything gets together. START will basically cut across through all this, puts the credentials in the hands of the supply chain, which will hopefully enable our customers, their customers, and the end users to make better informed decisions. When it comes to blockchain, very briefly, we had looked into various options, but with the security encryption features combined with the flexibility that technology will provide, blockchain was a clear winner. It allows us the flexibility of the digital filing cabinet. Once you're on it, we will be able to place significant amount of information, such as provenance and sustainability, that will be at their use. And the second one, with the geopolitics, but also the rules of origin, border requirements, and perhaps in the future carbon border jurisdictions, START through this technology will help our customers access to this information on a real-time basis. Look, we're really excited for the industry, for our customers, but for the whole supply chain, and look forward to explaining this further. Andrea?
Fantastic. No, and I love the description of blockchain as a digital filing cabinet. I'm going to start using that. So you talked there a lot about the consumer and the interest, you know, the passing down through the supply chain. I want to come to Matt here. You know, Matt, the London Metal Exchange has been very active in its work on sustainability. We've seen a number of initiatives rolled out. and you've been particularly advanced in your efforts surrounding aluminium as a sustainable material. You know, in your work today, what kind of interest are you actually seeing for initiatives like START?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's great to be here. And firstly, I wanted to just congratulate our friends at Rio Tinto for what is, I think, a really exciting and important announcement, you know, for the entire industry. It certainly hugely resonates with the LME as a marketplace, because exactly to your point, Andrea, we have over the past 5 years seen our market going on this journey. And the way that really impacts the LME is that if you look at the first 140 years of our history, you know, we maintain these brand lists of what is good metal to deliver on the LME, and they tend to be used more broadly in industry to identify good brands of metal. And as I say, for 140 years, all we've had to worry about is the metallurgical quality, the chemical specifications. We've said, if you're producing a good P1020, you're welcome to come onto our list. And in the last 5 years, we have been challenged to an unprecedented degree to say, is that enough? Or does the LME and the industry as a whole have a broader responsibility to embed not just metallurgical, but also ethical standards into the metal that is being traded? You know, that impacted us first with sort of the more human elements of responsible sourcing, which probably aren't quite as relevant for aluminium, given its supply chain, you know, items such as conflict financing or worst forms of child labor. And that's the first action that we took. But we very quickly realized, exactly as the previous speakers have said, that there is this huge demand out there in the industry for people to know more about the characteristics. And I'd really echo what Alf said. That's not a single dimension of sustainability. That is about all those dimensions of sustainability, so that we can have a world where I, as a consumer, can identify what is important to me, and I can go out and source material that meets those requirements, that checks those boxes. So certainly at the LME, that's something that we want to bring to our marketplace through a system that we're building called LME Passport. And I think the work that's being done by Rio and by others, providing that information, making it verifiable, making it available, is going to help drive our industry forward, and will be hugely important for the confidence of those who are sourcing material, and particularly sourcing material on the exchange.
Thanks, Matt. No, that's great. And Mark, you know, from the consumer perspective, you were working in the automotive industry, still are for 3 decades, and you've been very instrumental in bringing aluminium into use at Jaguar. You obviously understand that consumer perspective very well. This initiative really empowers consumers to understand the provenance and the environmental credentials of the materials they're using. We've sort of seen it somewhat in fashion and food. It's really the first time for materials, right?
Yeah, the automotive industry is perhaps a little bit slower to the market than perhaps fashion or electronic goods. We have a 4-year cycle time and then an 8-year lifespan for your average car. But there's now much more focus in the automotive industry on the environmental impact of the raw materials that we use in our vehicles. I mean, historically, in the 20th century, steel and iron were the main materials used, but in the first 2 decades of the 21st century, really aluminium has emerged as the material of choice for automotive, for weight saving, to reduce both emissions and increase fuel economy. But it's not just about that. Going forward, we must also understand the environmental impact of all the materials we use in automotive applications. The automotive industry is continuing to improve its sustainability and to lower the carbon footprint of its products, not only in the raw materials it uses, but also in the manufacture of its products, in the usage phase. Most people are now aware of the emissions of their vehicle, and at the end of life, and how do we choose materials that satisfy all those needs. And again, I think that aluminium is the material of choice for what we call total life cycle analysis. But we need to understand what is the life cycle analysis and what is the footprint of the materials that we use. And so as part of that drive, there's an increasing focus by the vehicle manufacturers to source responsibly produced aluminium for their products that they make.
Yeah, it's good to hear the view from the consumer, because all too often we often sort of assume that's what they want. Alf, I'm going to come back to you here. You know, metals and mining companies have traditionally been very focused on doing just that, producing commodities. A program like START signals much more of a focus on the end use. I mean, how does that sit in terms of the overall business strategy for a company like Rio Tinto?
Rio Tinto has been publicly acknowledged the reality of climate change now for over 2 decades, and we reduced our emission footprint by over 30% in the decade to 2020. We have set ourselves ambitious targets on emissions to reduce our carbon intensity by a further 30%, and our absolute emissions by a further 15% by 2030. Alongside, we've also established a now $1 billion fund to invest in climate-related projects. These targets will bring us closer to achieving our long-term goal of zero emissions by 2050. We see the materials we produce and our partnerships across the value chain as having an important role to play in supporting a more sustainable future. Aluminium is a great example. It's lightweight, infinitely recyclable, and we as Rio Tinto have some of the most responsible production in the industry. And this is not just in terms of low carbon through our hydropower. Our commitment is far more holistic. We're extremely well positioned with low carbon aluminium, and it serves us well to speak about it. But what does not serve aluminium or customers well is to speak just about low carbon. When we talk about green aluminium, we have to lift the horizon and give the full view. Last year, we announced our 2 closed loop recycling projects. I know many in the supply chain thought recycling is not a place for a primary producer like us to play in. We do. We have to listen to our customers and end users and provide solutions accordingly. A great example of that customer-centric view is the partnership we announced with the world's largest brewer, AB InBev, that I mentioned before, to bring a more sustainable aluminum can. We need to hear our end users and work with them on this sustainability journey. We see the need to do more to bring sustainable materials like aluminium to the front of the discussion, the public discussion around climate change and sustainability. We as an industry, I believe we need to tell a story on how we can and are part of that solution, especially now in the current situation. And that's really the aim with START, to empower our end users, the consumers, and the supply chain with our data and stories for them to use.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Tolga, you mentioned that START's going to be provided to your customers with their shipments. Will you want customers to actually ask for it, or will they just receive it automatically? You know, what do they need to do to start receiving the label and the letters?
Sure. Look, START will be available to all our customers as part of any purchase of aluminium from smelters that are managed by Rio Tinto. So that's the first principle, if you will. But this will be the part of the conversation we will have with our customers to make sure that the products that we produce meet their needs. The most important thing, Andrea, is to do this in a consultative, collaborative manner as opposed to pushing it. We do see the great pull in certain geographies, market sectors, and some end users, but we don't want to generalize it. And that's the beauty of this technology and Rio Tinto's approach too. We want to do this collaboratively and right across the value chain. We're currently rolling out this blockchain solution that I alluded to earlier, right across the aluminium business. Right now, it is available on orders placed for our Pacific smelting system. And in the coming months, we will be rolling out to our Canadian smelting system as well. So at the end of the day, it will be up to our customers, basically. They're in the driving seat, how and when they choose to receive that information from START. It's a great platform. You refer to the digital filing cabinet. It is a digital filing cabinet. So we want to put this data and information at their disposal. So depending on which geographic customers and market use and demand they see from their customers, they will be able to pull on us. But there will be areas where we would proactively go to market with this as well. Ultimately, as Alf alluded to as well, our ambition is to empower right across the value chain and end users with a fully traceable and also transparent supply chain that we believe is incredibly important in order to grow the use of aluminium as a choice of material.
Yeah, that transparency actually is central to the work that the LME is trying to achieve as well, Matt, in terms of sustainability, right? In the drive to create a centralized transparency source. How do you envisage start fitting in with the digital register you're creating that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so we see all of these initiatives as hugely synergistic, and we do have to work together as an industry to make these things operate effectively. If we look at the structure of the metals markets, clearly the vast majority of, in this case, aluminium, is sent directly from producer to consumer, and in that case, then clearly the start system is going to be the end-to-end approach, and I think that's going to be fantastic. What we're interested in at the LME is that a small amount of production does end up, if it's commodity grade, if it's ingot or T-bar or SAO, it ends up in our warehouses through merchants or through other routes. And so what we're really interested in, our piece of the sustainability and transparency puzzle, as it were, is that metal that ends up in the warehouses, be it Rio Tinto metal or be it other producers' metal, we would love for there to be as much transparency as possible over that small but important part of the market, because it's then very helpful for people who trade and who source on the LME. So to answer your question, what I think is so exciting about this is obviously the information is available down the value chain of people using metal that they bought from Rio, which is great. But what we'd also love to do is to bring that information into, to make that visible to those who are looking at warrants in the LME system that relate to Rio Metal and to work with other producers to do the same for them if they also want to go down this route, so that we also have that cross-market transparency at the warehousing and LME delivery layer. So it is very much a jigsaw puzzle. I think no one actor can solve all the market's problems, but what I really love about the way the industry is going right now is I think there's a real desire to work together, accepting that there's always going to be commercial forces, and there should be a real battle for who can make the most sustainable metal, have the best transparency. That's a great market force. But there's also a place for working together, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great. And I think just one more question before we go to the audience for Q&A, and I see that there's quite a few coming in already, which is great. Mark, I just wanted to go back to you. You've been listening to the discussion. What are your thoughts on whether, we've talked a lot about transparency, whether it can become that competitive advantage for aluminium that everybody's looking for against other competing materials?
Yeah, I think transparency is key, but I also think what Matt said about collaboration is also another key building block going forward. If we are to make aluminium the material of choice for transport, we need these type of initiatives. I think the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative, ASI, was a really good first step, and a number of OEMs signed up to that initiative, and it gives us traceability and transparency of where that aluminium material is coming from. I think it's really important that we understand the value chain and how responsible that value chain is, from mining through to production and into the end products, and how it got there, where it came from, and obviously the carbon footprint associated with that, because that does vary widely across the supply base. So I think the use of START is a really, really good initiative, especially in the digital age. We're moving to what we call Industry 4.0, where actually we're moving from a system using paper and old-fashioned filing cabinets now to those digital filing cabinets that Tolga referred to, because I think the blockchain technology is essential for us to be able to monitor that material regardless of where it is in the value chain, from mining through raw materials into production, and then even towards end of life and recycling of the vehicle at the end of its life. And it's really important as part of that to understand that CO2 equivalent per ton. So in summary, I think OEMs, car makers, are going to focus on several key areas. Obviously, responsible material sourcing is key to that, and I applaud the ASI and START initiatives. But we've got to put that in the context of the total environmental footprint and how do we use the metal throughout its life, and again at the end of its life, and reuse, and even design for disassembly. So I see the START in the digital world as important, or even more important than just the labeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. And we've got quite a few questions coming in, so I'm going to sort of dive into these now. You can put these into the Q&A function on the screen. I think the first few might keep Alf and Tolga quite busy. So starting off with, I'm going to go in the order that they were sent in. So Alf or Tolga, whoever would like to take it. The START label highlights that it will cover more criteria than just low carbon. How will these other criteria be measured or monitored, and will they be achievable for all? I don't know if you'd like to.
Maybe Alf, if you'd like me to go first. Look, as we alluded to, it's not going to only measure the CO2 content. Matt also alluded to that. We will be looking at 10 metrics, ranging from starting with CO2 emissions, biodiversity, human rights, and it continues. These are already measured as per our sustainability reports. It's publicly available, it's audited annually, and this is quite transparent. On top of it, we're also a founding member of the ASI. Vast majority of these metrics that we have put forward in there, that we will certainly consider adding more depending on the demand that we see from the end users and our customers. They're already audited, certified according to ASI chain of custody standards for our operations. So these two platforms are both our standards in Rio Tinto that is audited, and it goes to our annual sustainability report, but also through ASI, we have a sound platform that we will be able to take it forward. Alf?
Just to add to what Tolga said, I think what's important here is that our intention is clearly to work with our customers to understand what is important for them. And we're starting providing 10 key metrics that in discussion with customers, we believe are the important ones to kick off this process. But clearly over time, we'll be looking to expand that and to focus more in terms of the targets, the measure, the metrics that really are important for each of our customers and their end users. So it's a journey, Andrea, and the important thing is to start. We have, as Tolga explained, the tool, the blockchain. We have the systems behind to be able to provide that information for each of our managed sites. Now it's really about working with our customers and across the value chain to ensure that transparency that the blockchain allows us in terms of traceability is taken and used to extract really full value from the responsible production that we make.
Great, thanks both of you. We have another question here on whether the aluminium will be available to customers and consumers without having an impact on the cost or pricing equation. We've talked a lot about green aluminium and premiums, and so on. The question here is whether the sustainability feature requires a premium. I don't know who wants to jump in on this. I know Matt's answered a lot of questions about green aluminium premiums in the past, or whether anybody else wants to jump in on how the mechanics work.
I'd like to just jump in from a consumer point of view and say that from an automaker's point of view, we don't want to pay a premium. We see green aluminium as a right of service, and that if the car industry is spending billions on reducing CO2, moving towards electrification, and really transforming the carbon footprint of the vehicles we make, we hope that all of the supply chain, including the primary producers, will come with us on that journey, and it's not seen as something you can leverage extra costs. So that would be, speaking to all of the OEMs that I work for, that would be their position. We absolutely want the best metal, and we want it at the best price, and we want the cleanest metal we can get. Probably don't want to pay a premium for it.
Anybody want to add to that, or shall I leave it there?
Well, look, Mark is making a good point. I would very much like to look for an alternative view where we collaborate with our customers to articulate the credentials of aluminium versus other substitute materials. But take a step back, Rio Tinto's position have always been, it's not creating silos in the industry, but focus on a bigger picture of creating demand for aluminium versus other competing materials, positioning it well, and create that demand. Ultimately, we will see in the future how that price evolution and formation will take part. But our focus is not specifically on this one. We see it as much part of a bigger picture of our role, how we can shape this industry versus substitute materials, because that's where ultimately the real battle is.
Thanks, Tolga. And we've had a couple of questions in from people on, what is the definition of low carbon aluminium? Who's defining it? Where has anybody defined it? How much what is your criteria for it? So could somebody talk about that? Because I know there isn't actually a definition yet, is there? Not officially. Matt, do you want to have a go at that?
Yeah, very happy to talk to that one, because it was a central theme in the recent discussion paper we had around LME sustainability. And I think it's a really important question, because I personally do not believe it would be sensible at this stage to go out and cite a number. Because I think if you just cite a number, right, let's say that you say the threshold is 6 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of aluminium. I think there's a number of problems with that. The first is that there's the sort of cliff edge risk that somebody who's just on this side and somebody who's just on that side, who basically producing equivalent products, end up being bucketed into totally different universes. And that seems slightly unfair. But the second point is that it can also act as a disincentive to do better. Because once you've just made it into the bucket, what is your incentive to go further and outperform and do even better and have even more sustainability around your product? So I'm not a huge fan of having that cliff edge, having that division. I think the approach is much better, exactly what we're discussing today, which is let's be transparent about what we're doing and let's let the consumers make that decision, rather than telling them, sorry, consumers, there's this market segment and that market segment, and you only get to choose one or the other. So I personally, and I think it's sort of backed up by the market conversation we had, my personal view is that I don't think you want a bifurcation. You want to accept it's a spectrum and you want to be transparent about that spectrum.
Great, thanks, Matt. We've got a couple of questions in also about collaboration. Now, you talked about that today in terms of collaborating with customers. Some of these questions relate to collaborating with your peers and competitors. You've obviously got a great collaboration going in one area on the upstream side. I'm just wondering whether that translated also across into something like this. I don't know, Tolga or Alf would like to take that.
I think ASI is a good example of our approach towards collaboration. We were one of the founders of ASI, and our approach has always been to try and work with others and have the maximum number of players, competitors together to work in a space like this, because as Tolga touched upon before, we really need a critical mass to make a difference. And that critical mass comes from working together as an industry and trying to create that supply and that demand that will allow us to really move this issue forward in a way that has an impact on sustainability globally. So our interest is always to collaborate. Our interest is always to work as much as possible to make sure that the industry is fighting together to promote aluminium versus other materials. And as colleagues on the call talked about before, to work together to make sure that over time we can give a message to society that aluminium is a metal of the future and has specific characteristics that make it ideal for a sustainable future. And as we talk about economic recovery post-COVID, I think we have a great opportunity to position aluminium as a metal of the future and a contributor to that economic recovery. So working together, I think, is going to be critical, and we're keen on doing so, as we've demonstrated in the past through ASI and other forums.
Great, thank you, Alf. couple of questions here on the recycling aspects. How do you expect recycling to impact the traceability of aluminium, especially for small goods like cans and potentially for, as Tolga alluded to, packaging plastics? And also another one at the end related to, will you differentiate the post-consumer from the post-industrial recycled aluminium in the information provided? So that goes to a little bit more of the detail. I don't know whether Tolga or Alf would like to take those.
Sure, I can never go first. Look, the fundamental view, and Andrea, you would perhaps agree with me on this, the primary producers only look at primary aluminium and the downstream look at the secondary aluminium. This is primary, this is secondary. We don't believe in that. We ultimately need to talk about aluminium as a material. Alf alluded to earlier our initiatives on recycling that we have announced last year in Canada, and we will certainly be looking into growing this in the coming years, if you will. The key is START will also be a key enabler, actually, in this radical transparency. We're committing, actually, through this state to look at the amount of recycled content we use in our operations from pre-consumer and post-consumer scrap. Ultimately, it's a challenge, I mean, for recycling to go right across, but we're certainly committed to making sure that that description of post-consumer scrap or the pre-consumer scrap is defined and in time will be embedded into our offering.
Great, thanks, Tolga. We've talked a little bit here. I think I'll throw a question at Matt. Matt, slight aside here, but just to give you an opportunity, any progress on the separate trading of low carbon aluminium on the LME?
Yeah, so again, out of the discussion paper, we did really feel that the right first step was around transparency. You know, I do believe that going forward there'll be an opportunity for trading venues like ours to offer access to low carbon aluminium. But you know, I think at this stage, firstly for the point I raised earlier that there isn't a consistent definition of low carbon aluminium, and secondly because it's quite, you know, it's still quite a nascent thing, and we don't want to split liquidity on the LME's contract. Our view has always been this three-stage approach. So the first is just bringing transparency to what already happens, which is, you know, absolutely in line with what we're discussing today. The second is that perhaps there's not an opportunity for a spot platform where merchants and traders could make bids on low carbon aluminium. And then maybe in the fullness of time, there's an opportunity for futures contracts. But I think we have to be very measured and very balanced about how we bring that about, because you know, if we started to make significant market structure changes, change the existing LME contract, etc., I think it could be disruptive. It could undermine aluminium as a material, because I'd really echo the point that's been made a number of times, which is aluminium, however it's sourced, is hugely positive in terms of its life cycle contribution to the green transition. And thirdly, we could end up stifling innovation. So I think it's important that we take it slowly, that we very much reflect what the industry is doing. And I think that first step of transparency is really where we think we can add the most value right now.
Thanks, Matt. That also incorporated another question I had on trading and low carbon aluminium, so that's great. A question I'm going to throw at Mark here, if you don't mind. We've had a couple of questions in on you know, the fact that we all know we're looking towards a more transparent value chain. Are we confident that what customers actually want is being provided? Do we have a similar understanding of the values that consumers are looking for? And also, then I guess coming back to Tolga, how is Rio Tinto going to create the awareness engagement it needs to generate the demand for an awareness surrounding these sustainable solutions? So Mark, can I come to you first? You know, are these criteria the criteria that the industry needs to be hearing?
Well, let's start with the really big picture stuff. You know, the transport industry and other industries have a challenge to get to carbon neutral. No one can really define, as Matt has said, you know, what is carbon neutral to one person, maybe something to someone else. But I think the important thing is the transparency, so that you know, we have a set of metrics we can measure ourselves against, because you know, industry loves metrics. But those metrics should be metrics that are decreasing over time, so that we're showing stepped improvement over the years, as we have done with, say, the CO2 emissions in Europe, where we started off at 140 and we're now down to 120, we're going to 100, we'll go to 80 in the future. Those are the goals for every car maker that sells cars in Europe. We got similar things in North America with CAFE, and we've got similar emissions targets in Asia. So I think it's really important that the big picture is understood and what we need to do. There will be multiple ways of reaching those big picture targets, but I fundamentally believe that aluminium and lightweighting of our automotive products is key, not only for reducing CO2 in the vehicle itself, but also in making more sustainable vehicles that last longer, that have potentially a much lower carbon footprint than perhaps some of the materials that we're using today, especially the plastics. But I actually believe that aluminium can take steel head on and produce products in the future that have a lower true carbon footprint than steel and iron.
Great. And Tolga or Alf, in terms of generating the awareness amongst the consumer side of the industry, what's the plan and strategy there, apart from things like this?
Tolga, I'll leave it to you to sort of talk about what you've got in the plans for sales and marketing.
Look, I think the key, Andrea, for us is the sheer focus to have not only on our customers, but right across the value chain. I think that's for us the starting point. The second, keep on articulating and making it quite clear that we passionately believe in this material, aluminium, but not only on one metric, right across many metrics that we believe the end users are ultimately demanding for. And the other one is tailoring our offering to each of the market sectors and verticals. When I used to work with Mark, sitting on the other side of the table, he would be very demanding on the aluminium industry, give examples of how Jaguar and Land Rover would demand their supplier to do A, B, and C. But when I go and work with other Silicon Valley companies, if you will, on the electronics, their demands are very different. So tailoring our offering, taking that responsible aluminium production that we're known for, the way we go to market, and using that radical transparency that START platform will enable us, we'd like to use that process to have that dialogue. And through this, we're very much hoping that it will create new markets. It will enable our customers and their customers to capture new growth or compete with other materials, do it responsibly in a sustainable manner. This is clearly the direction that Alf alluded to. We've been going for years. We're focusing on this even more, and you'll be hearing us more on this.
And Tolga, presumably you can add metrics as you go along with relative ease.
Absolutely. One area, for example, I can see it in the maybe it's going to come, it's on the transportation, for example. The technology is such, what we have created here through blockchain, we will be able to add the metrics as and when our customers or the end users would demand. For example, we launched RioTrack in 2020 for our customers to enable them to track their shipments basically on time and real time. For example, we would be able to add that metric and even transport CO2 emissions from our factory door to our customer's door, so that that blockchain, that START offering would be even more complete. We will do it one step at a time, not imposing, not pushing, but for us, being humble and listening to the entire value chain is incredibly important.
I just want to emphasize that, Andrea, because I think it's part of our culture. It's being humble and working with our partners, working with our customers, and working with other companies through the associations that we're all part of. And that's important, because for us, it's about, we've launched a tool, a powerful tool that has the ability to expand, as Tolga mentioned, and really provide a lot of information tailored to the need of our customers in real time. And that is something that we need to now work with our customers to see how can we best utilize that to help them in their business. So we'll see where this can take us, but we have really huge ambitions in terms of how far this can take not only the industry, in the future, but also how far we can take other commodities as well when we start rolling this out in aluminium within Rio Tinto.
And that's great. And you actually also answered, Tolga, we had a question about whether this could be extended to the carbon footprint on the maritime legs, which are often forgotten. So that's
maybe I can add one piece on that too. Not only a transport mode, but Rio Tinto have multiple commodities, and we're very fortunate to have this. And we very much hope that with Alf joining us now in Singapore, we will be able to expand it to other commodities as well, whether it's copper products or minerals or iron ore, but we'll do it at a pace that suits the industry, the customers, and the demand. And that's among others, the strength of Rio Tinto. We will certainly be looking into that, Andrea.
You've just stolen my next question, which I was actually going to mention Al's move to Singapore and his appointment, leaving the cold winter of Montreal for a very different climate. But yeah, Alf, obviously, as we said earlier, you're moving to be the Chief Commercial Officer as part of the changes to Rio Tinto's leadership team. Tolga just alluded there to widening the approach you've taken with aluminium in terms of the leadership you've shown in sustainability and customer partnerships. Can you talk a little bit about that?
First of all, it's sad in leaving Montreal. Weather is not something I'll miss, but there's many things here in Montreal and many great friends that I'll miss in Montreal. But I'm not going far. I mean, part of my responsibilities will obviously take me to travel to Montreal quite often. First of all, I must say that I'm excited to be part of Jacob's leadership and the priorities he's put forward for Rio Tinto. And I'm very proud of having been part of the aluminium team. I've worked in different businesses. There's something special about aluminium, and I'll surely miss not being part of the aluminium team as such. And I'm very proud of what they delivered. If you look at what they've done over the last 7 years that I've been fortunate to be part of the team, strong performance on safety, among the leaders on financial performance, and also this journey that the team has led in terms of responsible aluminium production. My focus will obviously be in the new role to continue delivering value for Rio Tinto and our customers by taking forward a strategic commercial strategy, the commercial strategy that Simon, Todd, and Tolga and the other members of the team have so well designed and implemented in the last few years. There's also plenty to look at in terms of how can we expand the approach that we've taken aluminium, and Tolga has been alluding to that. There's a number of initiatives that we'll be looking to see how we can expand them to other commodities. But we also have to say that we've been quite active in other commodities. If you look at copper, at Kennecott and OT, these businesses were the first in the industry to receive the copper mark. So, it's not that we've only been doing work in the space within aluminium, we've also been quite active in the other areas. But I'm keen to join. I want to first listen and learn. I was part of the design of setting up the commercial organization in 2017. And as I said before, the team has done an outstanding job in the last 3 years. I have 30 years experience in operations and in commercial. My first job was in trading. So I really look forward to joining the team, listening, learning, and see how I can contribute to take it to the next level and build on a great platform that the team has put in place in the last 3 years.
Oh, I wish you all the very best in the new role. I'm sure
Thank you.
it's just as successful as it has been in aluminium. Question here from Mark. Over what time frame does the embedded carbon footprint in materials become important for the automotive sector?
So in terms of what we now call life cycle analysis, if I understand the question correctly, we're now looking at what we call cradle to cradle. So we're not just looking at the environmental footprint of the vehicle production. That's clearly important. The usage phase still dominates the total life cycle analysis, but we're actually trying to move now into a more circular economy, whereby we look at how do we either reuse or extend the life of or recycle the material that we make our vehicles out of. And that's probably one of the biggest pushes in the automotive industry today, so that we're not just looking at a snapshot of the CO2 output of a car, which hopefully will be zero for most cars beyond 2030 and 2040, when we're all driving either electric or hydrogen or a combination of both, where tailpipe emissions will become something of the past, and actually we'll be much more focused on what's their truly embedded carbon of a vehicle production for either personal transport or other forms of transport. So we have to look at it more holistically, and I think it's fantastic that Rio Tinto can look at not just primary production, but how they play a role in the total life cycle of either an automotive or a consumer electronic product. And I'm a great fan of the ELYSIS alloy, where we're actually saying we're going to get rid of carbon altogether in the manufacturing stage, and that for me is nirvana. That's the dream, to get to the lowest possible footprint by having no carbon emissions in the production stage, none in the usage stage through electrification, and then the best reuse of material at the end of that product's life. So I hope that was a bit long, but I hope that answered the question.
Not at all. You actually answered a question which I knew the answer to anyway, about what are the chances that sort of unsustainable material manages to seep its way and become the preferred choice in the auto sector, and it's obviously a no.
I think we're all driving towards literally zero carbon. It's a very difficult journey, but I think we can get there.
And it might be a good place to end, actually, is to hear from Alf and Tolga on ELYSIS and what's happening with the incredible technology that you're developing in Canada with Alcoa and Apple.
And we're very excited about ELYSIS, and we've seen some significant milestones over the past year. You look at the use of ELYSIS metal. Apple announced that its 16-inch MacBook Pro is the world's first device to be manufactured using the carbon-free aluminium from ELYSIS. And as you can imagine, Apple, of course, purchased the first commercial batch of ELYSIS metal. We also announced recently, as I mentioned earlier, that we supplied ELYSIS metal along with hydro-powered aluminium from our hydropower operations in Quebec and recycled content to AB InBev to use in the most sustainable low-carbon can, which is being piloted with Multi-Club Ultra. So a lot of work has already been happening by Tom and his team when it comes to usage of the metal that we produced in the test cells. The focus now is on scaling up the technology, and now what we are doing is shifting to Quebec, where we just recently completed a new lab, the construction of a new lab, a new industrial research and development center, which is now completed. The place is in a leased facility from Rio Tinto Complex and Care, which is, as you know, the heart of our aluminium operations in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. And the commissioning of the center is now in full swing. So we now have a 25-member team to start full-scale research and development in the coming months. Center will produce metal at a scale similar to smaller industrial-sized smelting cells that are in operation by some producers today. So that's where we are at the moment. It's an important step forward, the completion of that R&D center. And this will allow us to continue developing the technology and towards the aim of bringing it to commercialization by 2024. So that's where we are at the moment. But exciting developments, I would say, on the usage side, but also on the R&D side in the recent 12 months.
Absolutely. No, I think it's you're definitely leaving the aluminium division on a real high with the launch of Start as well at the starting the next leg of the journey, which is great stuff. Very exciting indeed. I think we've run out of time, unfortunately. There are plenty more questions I could certainly ask, but I just unfortunately we have to finish now. So I'd like to thank all of the panelists for their time today. It's been really interesting to hear about the new development, and the webinar will, just before I hand over to Alf and Tolga if they wanted to say anything before we finished, that this will be available on demand on our insights page of the website. But over to you just to finish maybe.
Andrew, just wanted to thank you and thank Matt and Mark as well for being on the panel with us. Thank you for running it, and as always, this is a start. of the journey. It starts here, and our interest now is obviously working with our customers to see how we can really bring this to them in a way that allows us to support them in their development of their business. So thank you for the opportunity to allow us today to start together with you, and look forward to continue working with all of you as we move forward on this journey.
Great. Thank you. And thank everybody else.
Huge thanks. Thank you.
Bye.